marching on. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He hath loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on.
My name is Amanda Joan of Heart. I've had prophetic dreams, angelic encounters, revelations, and a vision from God to bring awareness to modern moral issues. I want to share my creative arts, poetry, experiences, and stories with you. God is abundantly above and beyond what we could have asked or even imagined. And the most important truth that exists is love.
Can't hear you.
Thank you. I'm glad you unmuted yourself. Hi, everybody. Welcome to my podcast. I am the creator and founder of Awaken and Unite.com, TV with Purpose. I go by Amanda Joan of Heart. I'm here with Micah Dank. He is going to show us where Zodiac meets Scripture. And I'm going to read his bio. Micah Dank, author, explorer of hidden truths from a lineage steeped in media and storytelling. His father and grandfather, both producers at CBS News, Micah Dank has always been drawn towards the edge of the known and the whisperings of the unseen. Born in 1983 in Oceanside, New York, he discovered his writer's voice while majoring in English and literature in New York City, then later immersing himself in esoteric sciences when relocating to Boston. Speaking volumes, LLC His Into the Rabbit Hole series blends deep research, astro-theology, secret societies, and hidden code woven into religion and the cosmos. A genre-transcending ride that challenges readers to question everything they thought they knew. When Micah shares, he invites us into the back rooms of knowledge. The Zodiac meets Scripture, ancient symbols meet modern systems, and the line between fiction and fact begins to blur. Whether you're a truth seeker, metaphysical detective, or simply someone ready to awaken to a larger story, Micah Dank is a guide for that journey. Micah Dank's website is debunkmywork.com. So welcome, Micah, to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to go through this with you. I met you at the disclosuremovement.org conference in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked into your lecture on this and was blown away. I was like, wow, this is great. I've been following Jordan Maxwell's work for a long time, and I know that you used to work with him, and he has just been an eye-opener for me, bridging what God has shown me. You know, I've had experiences with God to where I was asking about Jesus one day, and the sun started talking back to me, and I was like, ha ha ha, I get it, you're the Son of God. And I'm like, I didn't realize it's more literal than I had any idea, because Jordan Maxwell's work and how he believes that the sun is very much associated with Jesus, and believes that that it is a representative of what Jesus is or is a part of, this consciousness we call God. I'm not really sure, but it's so much we gotta learn and ask our own. All of us have our own perspectives of God, and only because God only shows us different things, so we have this perspective. And I don't think we need to or can box God in. Abundantly above and beyond is not an understatement. And everybody has their own perception of the Bible, and the Bible speaks to people, and obviously has been speaking to you, and you've been bridging what is going on in this Bible. And a lot of this is in Revelations and stuff that you're decoding, and it has to do with astrology. And I've heard that for a long time, but you really bridged a lot of gaps in that, and I'm really excited to go through what you want to share with us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. So what I'm going to do is, I think we're going to do this in 2 parts. The first part, I'm going to go through the Bible, and then if you'll have me back on the second part, I'll go through 6,000 years of ancient holy texts. So that's basically the best way to do it. So if you want me to start, I can start.
Okay.
I just need you to put the screen up.
Okay.
Okay, so Amanda, check it out. When I'm talking and I'm going through my presentation, I'm going to be looking at my presentation and only my presentation. I'm not going to see you, or I'm not going to see the screen. So if you want to interject, just talk over me, okay? It's fine.
Okay. Yep.
I just want you to know that, okay? So let's start with this. At a certain point in this presentation, you're gonna not only see what I see, but you're gonna be able to see it ahead of time, and you're gonna ask yourself, and you're gonna ask me, what the point of encoding all this, what the point of this all is. And I thought I would just answer that at the beginning before I go into that. So that's what I'm going to do. So what is the point of all this that I'm about to show you? Why did they do this? Well, we take for granted that we have calendars, clocks, watches, weathermen. The ancients didn't have any of that. They had sundials. In the Bible, they worked on dream interpretations for harvest. That's the story of Joseph and the Pharaoh. They had to know things. They needed to know Taurus is when you put the plow on the bull and plant as above, so below. The Bible is an encoded farmer's almanac, and was the knowledge of staying alive the most important thing. They would look at the stars and see all this movement and make up stories about it, and then pass it down to their children, then them to their children. Eventually, they learned how to write, and they wrote them down, and it evolved from Sumerian to Babylonian to Egyptian to Judaism in the Old Testament, then to the Christians in the New Testament. So this quote right here that you guys are going to get very familiar with, that I'm going to say a bunch of times today. My point, once again, is not that those ancient people told literal stories, and we are now smart enough to take them symbolically, but that they told them symbolically, and we are now dumb enough to take them literally. So with that being said, here's the Zodiac. And Cancer's at the top. This is summer, this is fall, this is winter, this is spring. Cancer's at the top, Capricorn's at the bottom. Now, a couple of things about the Zodiac that I want to teach you. For example, if we're talking about Aries, which is right here, that's the ring. If we're talking about Aries, we could talk about Aries. If we're talking about Taurus here, you're in Taurus, that's the bull. But if in the story it's right here, these dividing lines don't actually exist. They don't actually exist. They're just shown in the Zodiac when you make the Zodiac, but they don't actually exist. You're not looking out into the sky and the sky is divided. What these represent is what you call a cusp or a handover date. It's a 3-day end of the sign, 3-day beginning of the next sign, time period where the energies blend. So if the story's in between the two, you could talk about the bull or the ram. The other thing I wanted to show you was that if you're talking about Aries here, you can make connections. For example, these are called connecting signs. You have Pisces, which is to the right of Aries, and Taurus, which is to the left. Those are connecting signs. Another form of sign that you can make is you have Aries, and then you can go across to what's known as its opposing sign or its cross sign, which would be Libra. And you're going to find that these connections, the connecting sign and the opposing sign, are all that you're going to find. It's not going to go from randomly Gemini to Aquarius, which doesn't make any sense because there's no connection there. It's always going to be connecting sign or opposing sign. So that's what I want to prep you with. Now, there's questions you can ask in the Bible. How Jesus was able to heal the blind, how he walked on water, how he turned water into wine, why he had 12 disciples, why was he betrayed with a kiss by Judas, why was he dead for 3 days, why is his birthday on December 25th, and all that is astrology, and I'm going to show you that. Now, Genesis 1:14 is very important. It says, let lights appear in the sky to separate the day, that's the sun, from the night, that's the moon. Let them be signs to mark the seasons, days, and years. That's the Zodiac signs. And that's exactly what it is, as I mentioned that it's the Farmer's Almanac. Now, each Zodiac sign is called a house, or an era, or an eon, or a sign, or a mansion. There are many different words that they use in the Bible to do it, to represent it. So what I'm going to do is right now I'm going to go through the 12 signs in the Zodiac. I'm going to teach all your listeners the 12 signs that they might not know as is. Now I'm going to start with Aquarius, and I'm going to explain why in a minute. The first sign I talk about is Aquarius, which is represented by the man with the water pitcher. Now technically Aries begins the year, but because Aquarius is close to our new year, I start with that. Also, it's the first of the 2 water signs, and I'll show you that. So the story of Aquarius, one of its early iterations, goes back to the story of Zeus and the young boy. And the story of Zeus and the young boy is basically a story about how Zeus saw a young boy on Earth, and he wanted him on Mount Olympus with him in heaven. The boy's father wouldn't let him go, so the story evolves that Zeus bargains with the boy's father, gives him a bunch of stuff. The boy's allowed to go up. When the boy goes up, and incidentally, by the way, Mount Olympus is actually a real place on Earth. I don't know, many people don't know that. Mount Olympus is a real place on Earth, and none of the Greeks ever thought to climb it to see if the gods were up there. But that aside, they're on Mount Olympus, and the boy is feeding everyone under this water pitcher something called ambrosia, which was the nectar that the gods drank. It's what sustained the gods. It's what they drank. It was called ambrosia. And he's doing this day in and day out, day in and day out. And after such a long, monotonous time period of doing this, he gets so fed up that what he does is he goes to the edge of the world and he pours it out. And this causes a great flood on Earth. That's where the Greeks get their flood story. And Zeus, who's usually a malevolent, angry, sexually deviant, unpredictable god, was going to punish him. But in a moment of self-reflection, which was rare for Zeus, this is why this story is interesting, is because Zeus actually self-reflected and went, you know what? I probably shouldn't have brought him up here. He was young. He had family. He had kids. He had friends. So you know what? Instead of punishing him and hurting him, what he does is he immortalizes him as the constellation Aquarius, which I'm highlighting right here. This is what you see. So there's key words for Aquarius. And incidentally, Aquarius is an air sign in astrology. But because there's liquid here, they use it to encode water. So whenever you hear the word man, because Aquarius is the sign of the man, whereas Virgo is the sign of the woman. Baptism, because this is literally how you baptize someone. Water pitcher, because there's a water pitcher here. Stream, river, pond, lake, ocean, sea, water bodies. Again, Aquarius is an air sign, but because there's liquid here, they use it to talk about water. Now, Pisces is actually a mutable water sign, and it's a sign of the 2 fish in the water. So it's the same thing, stream, river, pond, lake, sea, ocean. So the reason I start with Aquarius is because I wanted to show you that the first 2 that I talk about are water. Now, whether it's Aquarius water or Pisces water depends on how they word things, and I'm going to show you that, and that's going to make sense. Now, Aries is the ram, and in Aries you have March 21st, which is the spring equinox. It's a 12-hour day and a 12-hour night. It's also the Passover, or the passing over of the sun over the equator and back on its way to its height in the summer solstice. The Jewish Passover is when the angel of death passes over And anyone that doesn't have the lamb, which is a baby ram, by the way, blood on their doorpost, signifying they're the people of Aries. They're the Jews. They're to be protected. Their firstborn sons are not to be killed. Aries is the ram. The Jews are the people of Aries. That's why they blow the ram's horn during the high holidays. And in Christianity, the passing over is changed and it becomes the resurrection of God's Son. So you have keywords: ram, lamb, shepherd, or ram's horn. That's for Aries. Then Taurus is the bull. And when you look at the sky and you see Taurus during the season where it's supposed to be, you know that you need to put the plow on the bull so that you can plant the seeds so you can harvest in Virgo and Libra. It's as above, so below. You see the bull in the sky, you put the plow on the bull on earth. Now, we have John Deere equipment that does that now. But back in the day, they had to use the bull. So whenever you hear bull, ox, calf, or cow, cow is the female bull, by the way, you're talking about Taurus. Gemini is the twins. It's the story of Castor and Pollux Troy. Remember that name because we're going to get back to it. Whose sister was Helen of Troy? It's the story of Achilles. It's another Greek story. So whenever you hear twins or brothers, that's Gemini. Then Cancer is the crab. The crab in the ancient Egyptian time was known as the scarab. That's very important, by the way. It used to be the scarab. So why is Cancer the crab? Well, Cancer right here. So right here, where I'm at right here, December 25th, the sun rises a degree on its axis. On December 26th, it rises an additional degree. On December 27th, it rises an additional degree. What I'm doing right now is not to scale. I'm just showing you that every day the sun is going to go through the zodiac and it's going to rise a degree on its axis. Now the days are getting longer, the nights are getting shorter. When it hits the summer solstice of June 21st, the sun is at its height. It cannot rise any higher. It's the longest day of the year. Now, what it's going to then do for 3 consecutive days after June 21st, so June 22nd, 23rd, 24th, is it's not going to rise a degree or lower a degree. What it's going to do is it's going to stay at that exact same degree, or as it was known, walking sideways, which is the crab. The crab is the sideways walking creature. That's why Cancer is the crab. Then on June 25th, it's going to drop a degree. On June 26th, it's going to drop another degree. Now it's the inverse. The nights are getting longer. The days are getting shorter. And it's going to continue to do this all the way until December 21st. That's the longest night of the year. December 21st is the longest night of the year. It's the shortest day of the year. The ancients would look out into the sky during the sunrise, and they would notice that on December 21st, the sun wouldn't crack the horizon. So they used to say that the sun was dead. And then what it's going to do is it's going to walk sideways like the crab for 3 days. So now suddenly God's son was dead for 3 days. We're on December 25th, or the birth of all the gods. The son is born again, the risen Savior, the light of the world. The only begotten Son comes back to life. And the sun does this every single year, starting December 21st, 5th, rise a degree, rise a degree, rise a degree. Pause on the summer solstice, walk sideways for 3 days, drop a degree, drop a degree, drop a degree, drop a degree. Then on December 21st, pause, walk sideways for 3 days, and then come back to life. And that's what it does. So that's why Cancer is the crab. Now, Leo is the king. He's the lion. He's the king of the jungle or the king of the savannah. The ruling planet of Leo is actually the sun. So whenever you're talking about lion, lioness, or cub, that's Leo. Now, Virgo is the woman holding the wheat stalk, which I'm highlighting right here so you can see it. It's the woman holding the wheat stalk. Why? Because remember when I said that you plant in Taurus? Well, the virgins would go out and cultivate the wheat in Virgo in order to make the bread for the year. So whenever you hear virgin, woman, because Virgo is the sign of the woman, wheat, grain, seed, barley, corn, these are all grainy things that in the northern hemisphere thousands of years ago were harvested during the harvest season. The wheat makes the bread, the barley makes the beer. Then you have Libra. Libra is the justice. It's the scales, it's the balance. He's the just one. The reason it's the justice is because it judges God's sun as it passes over, or technically now passes under the fall equinox and begins its descent into winter, into cold, into death. Libra is also wine season, which is when you plant for the grapes in Taurus, you could press the wine here. Libra is also olive season. That's when you harvest the olives and you make the holy oil. So Libra is all law-related things like law, judge, justice, the just one, divorce, marriage, court. That's law. All wine-related things or grape-related things. Vineyard, wine, wine press, grapes, and olive oil or olive oil. So Libra is law, wine, and oil. Law, wine, and olive. Law, wine, and olive. And I'm going to keep repeating that so that you guys can remember it. Now, Scorpio is the scorpion, and he is the betrayer. When a scorpion attacks you, it leaves an imprint in your skin that looks like a pair of lips. And it's where the mafia gets the idea for the kiss of death. And it's why Jesus was betrayed by Judas with a kiss. So the sun is judged in Libra, and it's betrayed in Scorpio. Incidentally, let me just show you this real quick. There's 8 different evolutions of the Scorpio. You have the scorpion, you have the eagle, and then the phoenix. And there's also the dove. There's 8 of them total. I only want you to remember these 4 because the other 4 are irrelevant for this presentation, but I want you to be aware of the scorpion, the eagle, the dove, and the phoenix. So the sun is judged in Libra, it's betrayed in Scorpio, and then finally in Sagittarius, this is where the bow and the arrow shoot the sun and inflicts further punishment on the sun. Why? Because this is where the sun dies, and I mentioned that to you. The last day of Sagittarius is December 21st. That's the first day of winter. So whenever you hear horse, bow and arrow, and horseman, you're talking about Sagittarius. And then finally you have Capricorn, who's the goat. And Capricorn's all the way at the bottom right here. So the sun's going to start climbing what's known as the Great Mountain, which is what the Zodiac is known as, the Great Mountain. And why is Capricorn the goat? Because it starts to climb up the Great Mountain in Capricorn, and the goat, the mountain goat, climbs the mountain better than any animal out there. So those are the 12 signs. Do you have any questions or any comments that you want to add before I continue?
No. Thank you.
No, you're good?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. Okay. So now, there's names in church that they give to Jesus. These are nicknames. They're all astrology, based on what I just explained to you. When Jesus, and by the way, the sun is behind his head showing that he's the sun. He's the sun in every single picture of the internet. The sun is always behind him. It's not a halo. It's the sun, because they're showing you that he's the sun. Capricorn is the goat. When the sun is in Capricorn, the goat, he is the scapegoat of Israel. When the sun is in the sign Aquarius, the man, he is the son of man. When the sun is in the sign Pisces, the 2 fish, he is the fisher of men, and it's also why he feeds the masses with 2 fish. When the sun is in Aries, the ram, he is known as the Lamb of God or the Good Shepherd. Cancer, the crab, also known as the scarab beetle, St. Augustine called Jesus the good beetle. When the sun is in Leo, the lion, he is the Lion of Judah. The lady holding the stalk of wheat, Virgo, the virgin, he is born of a virgin, and he is called the bread of life. Libra is the scales of justice. He is known as the just one. These are all names that he's given in church that are all based on astrology that no one seems to know. Now, if I start going into scripture, I'm going to show you how this works. Deuteronomy 32. He gave them honey from the cliffs. I'm going to highlight them. He gave them honey from the cliffs and olive oil from the rocky ground. He gave his people butter from the herd and milk from the flock. He gave them lambs and goats. They had the best rams from Bashan and the finest wheat. They drank the best wine made from the juice of red grapes. But Jeshurun became fat and kicked like a bull. So, let me show you the honey and the milk first. This is the beginning of Cancer. This is the first day of summer. This is June 21st. In the sign Cancer, there's a group of stars, a closely knit group of stars like I'm showing you right here, called the Beehive Cluster. That's where the honey comes from. The Beehive Cluster, if you trace it back even further, its original name was the Manger. So go figure. Now in Sagittarius right here, if you follow this opposing sign, remember the connection. If you follow this all the way here, this day right here is the first day of winter. It's the last day of Sagittarius. In Sagittarius, you have the middle of the Milky Way galaxy, which is where the milk comes from. So what I'm trying to tell you is your first day of summer all the way to your first day of winter is your land of milk and honey. It's not a place on earth. Now, that's the milk and the honey. The olive oil is Libra. The lamb is Aries. The goat is Capricorn. The ram is Aries. The wheat is the lady with the wheat stalk, Virgo. The wine and the red grapes are Libra. And the bull is Taurus. So there are 7 signs here in Deuteronomy 32. So that's just one example of how this works. Now, if I were to show you how this works on the Zodiac, Jesus led his disciples to the Mount of Olives. So let me highlight this. To the Mount of Olives. Remember, olives are Libra, right? Olives are law, wine, and olives. After his last Passover, so that he could teach them a few more things, pray, then wait for Judas to betray him. While walking to the Mount of Olive, he gave the parable of the true vine. So check this out. Passover is right here in Aries. We're right after that, they're walking to the Mount of Olives after the Passover. Well, olives are in Libra. That is its opposing sign. So that's one connection right there. Now, while they're in Libra, they're waiting for Judas to betray him. And who's the betrayer? Well, that's the next connecting sign over, Scorpio, the betrayer. But it says they're waiting for him to betray. It didn't say he betrayed, which means you're still in Libra. While he's in Mount of Olives, he gives the parable of the true vine, and the vine has to do with grapes, which is Libra. So you have an opposing sign and then a connecting sign, but then you remove that and you go back to here. So this is making a definite pattern. In Revelation 4:7, the first living creature was like a lion. The second was like an ox. The third had a face like a man. The fourth was like a flying eagle. The first living creature was like a lion, that's Leo. The second was like an ox, that's Taurus. The third had a face like a man, that's Aquarius. The fourth was like a flying eagle. So remember I told you about the evolution. In astrology, the scorpion is the belly-crawling creature. It crawls on its belly. It's the lowest form of life on earth. In the Garden of Eden, right after the deception, the first thing that God does is not kicking Adam and Eve out. That's not the first thing he does. The first thing that God does is take the legs away from the snake to make him slither on his belly. It's a punishment. In Mexico, during Santo de la Muerte, the men dress up in suits and they crawl on their hands and knees and their bellies to church. It's a punishment. But the evolved form, which is known as the ascendant, is the eagle, whereas the eagle is not the lowest form of life on earth. It's the highest flying form of life on earth. So the scorpion evolves into the eagle. Now, the eagle also evolves into the phoenix. And the phoenix is what? It's the story of Christ. It's the story of the sun. It's a flaming ball of life that dies and is resurrected from its ashes. So you have Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, and Scorpio. They are the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac. Now, what does that mean? Well, you have 12 zodiac signs, and you have 4 seasons. So you have 3 signs in each season. So this is summer. This is fall. This is winter. And this is spring. Now, the first sign in each season, which I'm highlighting right here, they're known as the cardinal signs. That's why there's cardinals in church. Now, any astrologer will tell you that I can take any of these 12 zodiac signs and you can split them into 3 10-day segments called deacons, which is why you have deacons and cardinals in church. So this is the first sign. This is the cardinal sign. This is the fixed sign, what I'm circling right here. Leo, Scorpio, or the eagle. Aquarius, the man. Taurus, the bull. And this is the mutable sign. Virgo, Sagittarius. This is the water sign that takes us out of the season. So you have 3 signs. Now, the fixed signs, Leo and Aquarius, look at that. They're opposing signs. Taurus and Scorpio, or the eagle, are opposing signs too. The reason they're called fixed signs is because they're fixed in the season. Remember, you have 3 signs in each season. The fixed signs are the second out of third. They're smushed in the middle. They're the dead of the summer. Leo is summer. Scorpio is fall. Aquarius is winter. Taurus is spring. So either there's going to be a 4-headed creature in Revelation that's actually going to come out of the heavens, or it's literally just making this pattern of the fixed signs in the Zodiac.
Which is a cross.
Ezekiel 10:14. Huh?
Which is a cross, That's interesting. And
Yep.
I've seen that lion and the ox and the man and the bull on like my church ceiling of the church, and I always asked when I was younger, why did they have that on there? And nobody could tell me why.
Yeah.
But I also heard that at the throne of God is also a half lion, half bird beings and stuff too at the throne of God as well, right?
Isn't that interesting? Look, Ezekiel 10:14. Each of the cherubim had 4 faces. One face was that of a cherub, the second the face of a human being, the third the face of a lion, and the fourth the face of an eagle. If I show you Ezekiel's vision, which I could do if we do a third presentation, I could show you Ezekiel's wheel, Ezekiel's vision, and explain that to you. It's there too. So Revelation 12. This is the woman and the dragon. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon, with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky, and flung them to earth. So let's look at this a little bit closer. But first, hold on. There we go. I'm going to need one of these. Yeah, let me do that. Okay. All right, here we go. Check it out. A woman clothed with the sun is the sun clothed in Virgo. It's just a metaphor for the sun being in Virgo. If the sun is in Virgo, the moon will be at her feet. Well, let's explain that. If the sun is in Virgo, the moon will be at its feet. So there's 12 zodiac signs, right? Let me just finish highlighting these. Here, there's 12 zodiac signs, right? There's 24 hours a day in each day. So this is also a clock. The sun spends 2 hours a day in each sign. So starting here at the bottom, Capricorn is midnight to 2. This is 2 to 4. This is 4 to 6 a.m., 6 to 8, 8 to 10, 10 to 12, 12 to 2, Cancer, it's height, right? This is when the sun's rays are at its strongest. Then this is 2 to 4, and Virgo, which we're looking for, is 4 to 6. So 4 to 6 p.m. But if the sun is in Virgo between 4 to 6 p.m., the moon will be at her feet. It's a metaphor, right? Because if the sun is up, the moon is metaphorically down. Whereas if the moon is up, then the sun is down. It's just a metaphor. So if the sun is in Virgo, that's 4 to 6 p.m., the moon will be at her feet. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous dragon. Its tail, which I'm highlighting right here, swept a third of the stars out and flung them out of swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to earth. This is the constellation Draco, is the dragon. Its tail goes from Aries to Sagittarius, which is 4/12 of the signs, or 1/3 of the stars out of the sky. So it goes from Aries to Sagittarius. Now, Matthew 10:16. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. So the sheep is Aries. And the wolf is the constellation Lupus, which is where? It's in Libra. That's an opposing sign. So be as wise as serpents. Who's the serpent? Well, between Scorpio and Sagittarius, you have Ophiuchus, who's the serpent bearer. And harmless as doves. Well, the dove is one of the evolutions of Scorpio. So if you read this, behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves, so be as wise as serpents and harmless as doves. You have an opposing sign here, and then you have 1, 2, 3 signs in a row in just that one little pattern. So I've given examples of astro-theology in the Old Testament as well as the New Testament. I've been accused of cherry-picking verses from the Bible to prove a point. So let's take a much longer passage and see if we can decode it as well. Can I run to the bathroom real quick to take a pee?
Yes. Go for it.
What's up?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll be 2 seconds.
So yeah, this is very, very interesting to me. You know, when I was asking Jesus, can you please reveal more to me about yourself? And the son started talking back to you, you know, you're like, oh, I just made a joke. And it's the son obviously has a consciousness. It gives life to all of us. And it's very much outlined in a lot of Jordan Maxwell's work. He has studied this stuff for over 50 years. And he's dead now, unfortunately, but Micah Dank is carrying out his legacy, I feel like, and letting people know that there's a lot of metaphors in our Bible that we're not aware of, and we take a lot of this stuff literal. And it's not always literal. So I'm not saying it's all metaphoric, but I'm saying that some of it quite possibly could be. And I think we need to use discernment and we need to study because, you know, these are the scripts written for our time, which we're in right now. We're in these end times. We're seeing all these end times things happening. And in my opinion, it's happening. I mean, you know, I had dreams of where God came back and he told me. And that's why I used the Battle Hymn of the Republic as my song. You know, mine eyes have seen the coming of the glory of the Lord. Well, he showed me in a dream. He said he was coming back because of our governments are doing all this stuff to us, and started listing all this stuff. And his voice like rattled the earth, you know. And so I started looking for all this stuff our governments were doing, and you know, was finding things, unfortunately. So, you know, this is, you know, the people, you know, in religion, you know, have used some of these documents or ancient texts and they've taken out a lot of ancient texts to use to program and manipulate. And, you know, not a lot of these texts don't tell you who you are, that greater works that you will do, like Jesus type of things, is happening to us. And that's what I've been shown. It is happening to us on all different kind of layers and different dimensional realms that a lot of us are not aware this isn't going on. A lot of us are going to wake up at the last minute and not, you know, have this slow awakening where we're revealed all these things. Some people are just hopefully going to choose to awaken like right now. But, you know, the stuff that empowered the people, a lot of that stuff was removed. So it's time that we awaken to our divine inheritance, our power, and do these greater works, you know, walk in faith, and we can move mountains, you know. There's so much we don't know, and we need to use a lot of discernment, because this revelations and stuff is their playbook, you know. And we gotta discern and understand this playbook to get what the heck's going on here.
All right, I'm back.
Okay, I just had a brief moment of my thoughts.
It's okay. So I'm going to read you the story of Job. More specifically, I'm going to read you the story of God answering Job. So the first thing God says is, can you lead forth the Mazzaroth? The Mazzaroth literally translates to the Zodiac. It's left untranslated intentionally because they don't want you to look up the fact that the Mazzaroth means Zodiac. You could look this up. Mazzaroth over time evolves, and it becomes the Mazalot, which survives in Judaism today, Mazel Tov. And Mazel Tov means good fortune from the stars. So what's the Lord's challenge to Job? He says, can you bind the chains of the Pleiades? Can you loosen Orion's belt? These are open celestial metaphors that I was telling you. They were all hidden before, but now here's two open ones right here. Can you bring forth the constellation in their seasons or lead out the bear with its cubs? The constellations are the zodiac above, and the bear and its cubs are Ursa Major, the Great Bear, and Ursa Minor, part of the Big Dipper. Now check this out. This is the beginning of his challenge. The Pleiades are in Taurus. Orion's belt is between Taurus and Gemini. And the bear and its cubs, Ursa Major, the Great Bear, and Ursa Minor, part of the Big Dipper, are between Gemini and Cancer. Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer are three signs in a row. So his response to Job opens up with three signs in a row. Then he says, who can tip over the water jars of heaven? Well, that's literally Aquarius, the man with the water pitcher. Do you hunt the prey for the lioness and satisfy the hunger of the lions? That's Leo the lion. So Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, and Leo are four signs in a row. So to open up Job, you have Aquarius right here, and then you have these four signs in a row. So these are definite patterns that they're making, and they're not making them by accident. But if you keep reading, who provides food for the raven? That's the constellation Corvus, which means raven and borders on Virgo. Now it's five signs in a row. Do you watch where the doe bears her fawn? That's Mariga, meaning deer, is located in Orion, which is located in Taurus. Who let the wild donkey go free? That's Acellus Borealis, means donkey, and is located in Cancer. Will the wild ox consent to serve you? That's Taurus, the bull. Do you give the horse its strength? So they mentioned the horse, so we know it's Sagittarius, right? But if you keep reading, it laughs at fear, afraid of nothing. It does not shy from the sword. The quiver, see, they mentioned the quiver. For those of you who don't know, the quiver is what sits on the side of the horse, of the rider, and it holds the arrows because it's a man on a horse with a bow and arrow, which is literally Sagittarius. Does the eagle soar at your command and build its nest on high? The eagle is the evolution of Scorpio. Finally, he says, can you pull in Leviathan with a fish hook? And Leviathan was an ancient fish god. It was the same thing as Mithra, as Dagon. There's all these ancient Piscean age fish deities. So at the end of the day, God replies to Job, and you have these two connecting signs, and you have these five signs in a row. So what this tells you is, what's up?
That's just in Job, right? He just outlined
That's just Job.
Yeah.
That's just Job. He outlined the heavens. He outlined the heavens. Now, it didn't mention Aries, so it didn't mention a ram or a lamb or a shepherd. It didn't mention the goat and Capricorn. And Libra is wine, oil, and law. So it didn't mention any of those three, but 9 out of the 12 signs are fully mentioned here in Job. These are outlining. This is celestial poetry that is outlining the heavens. So, answer to the questions at the beginning. How was Jesus able to heal the blind? Well, the story goes the blind man came up to Jesus. He was blind, and he was like, can you heal me? Can you heal me? And Jesus was like, oh, I see your faith. Absolutely, I could do that. So he spits on his fingers, he touches the dirt, and he rubs it on the man's eyes. When the dirt falls off, the man's able to see. That's in the story. But astrologically, what happens is, if you look at it right now, it's 7:30 at night in Florida. I'm looking out the window, and it's pitch black. Without lamps or without street lights, we are completely blind at night. What has to happen is the sun or Christ has to come up in the morning, touch our eyes to give us our vision. Now, how he walked on water, we know the story about how the Son walks on water. The Son of God, Jesus, walks on water. But the sun also does that too. The sun does that too. If you've ever gone fishing, if you ever sat in a boat or on a yacht or something and seen the sun in the dawn or dusk dancing on the water. And you know what? The Jews wrote the New Testament in Greek. I'm going to repeat that one more time. The Jews wrote the New Testament in Greek. There were no Christians. The Christians didn't write the New Testament. These were all Jews. And it was written in Greek. Christ is a title. Christos means anointed one or oil. And Joan, doesn't oil also walk on water if you pour oil on water?
Yeah.
So what this is he walked on water, the sun walks on water, and Christos walked on water. This is a triple entendre that's buried in there. Now, how we turned water into wine, excuse me a second. How we turned water into wine. This is not a parlor trick. This is something that happens every year. You see, the reason God has always been considered a man or male and Mother Earth, the woman, has to do with one thing. And it has to do with the rain that falls down, the sacred fluid. In Hebrew, the word is shemen. We get the word semen from it. It's the sacred fluid. So what you have to think about this is metaphorically, poetically, what happens is God's semen comes down onto Mother Earth and impregnates her. And from the water, from the semen, and landing on her belly, all sorts of food and vegetation grow. So what happens is, April in Taurus, as above, so below, you see the bowl in the sky, you put the plow on the bowl on Earth. And for those of you who don't know what Taurus is, y'all can pick out Orion's belt. I know that. That's Taurus. So when you look straight up at the sky and you see Taurus, you know that you have to put the plow in the bowl. So you plant the seeds, the grape seeds, and then what happens is it rains and it rains and it rains, God's shemen, and then what happens is in Libra, you pick the grapes and you crush the wine. That's why you turn God's water into wine. Why he had 12 disciples? Let's go over this real quick. So, Gemini, there's 12 disciples. They each represent the 12 zodiac signs. I'm sure you guys have heard that before, but let me explain a couple of them to you. Gemini is Thomas Didymus, because in Hebrew, the word ta'om, which is ta'om, means twin. And in Greek, what the New Testament was written in by the Jews, Didymus in Greek means twin. Those are the two twins. That's Gemini. Scorpio is the betrayer. That's Judas. Libra is James. He's known as the just one. Aquarius would be John the Baptist, the man baptizing people with the water pitcher. And as my mentor Santos Bonacci said and explained in Pisces, this is Jupiter, or Jew Peter. Simon Peter doesn't make sense. But Michael to Mike, Samuel to Sam, Thomas to Tom, that all makes sense. Simon to Peter doesn't make sense unless you understand astrology. Simon's job was a fisherman, and the fish are the two fish Pisces. That's the fish. The ruling planet of Pisces is Jupiter, or Jew Peter. So I've just given you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 examples of the zodiac. I'm not going to go into all 12, but I just wanted to give you an example of the 5 of these. Now, if we go back, why was he betrayed with a kiss by Judas? We went over that. Why was he dead for 3 days? We went over that. The sun walking sideways. Why is his birthday on December 25th? We went over that. Now, when you talk to a Christian, they're going to tell you that Jesus was not born on December 25th, that he was either born on September 11th, the Feast of the Tabernacles, after Passover. They'll have all these dates ready for you, telling you this is when he was born. And then that's when you can tell them that's within the story. I'm trying to tell you the story that spawned your story. And the story that spawned your story, all the ancient gods were born on December 25th because that's the day the sun rises from being dead for 3 days. So, this science only works for people in the northern hemisphere, and there's a reason for that. The Egyptians, Jews, Christians, and Muslims are all based out of the northern hemisphere. For example, June 21st, the summer solstice, is actually the winter solstice in Australia, New Zealand, much of South Africa, and South America. So what that means, Joan, for example, Here's Taurus. As above, so below. You see the bull, you plant. You put the plow on the bull. The southern hemisphere, when you're looking to do the planting, what you have to do is go to its opposing sign. This is 6 months apart. So this is when you plant in the southern hemispheres during Scorpio. In Virgo here, this is where the virgins collect the wheat. You would go 6 months opposite. Right here. Pisces. So I hope that makes sense. So it doesn't stop there. It's not just random passages in the Bible that can be decoded this way. We're going to go through the entire book of Revelation to show how deep this runs. I heard you mentioning Revelation when I was coming back from the bathroom about the playbook. And I'm going to show you their playbook. Now, this is the four-headed creature. This is known as the tetramorph. We went over this. This is the lion, the ox, the man, and the eagle. So I'm going to skip it because we already touched base on it, okay? But it's there. Revelation 5:5. Then one of the elders said to me, do not weep. See the lion of the tribe of Judah. Well, that's Leo, the lion of the tribe of Judah. The root of David has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll and its 7 seals. Jesus is the sun. The sun's ruling planet of Leo. The sun only rules Leo. Now, Revelation 6:1. I watched as the Lamb opened the first of the 7 seals. Then I heard one of the 4 living creatures, the 4 fixed signs, remember? Say in a voice like thunder, come. The Lamb has to open the first seal. The reason is because the Lamb is Aries. That is the first sign. Aries is April. Do you know how it opens the year? Do you know how to say open in Italian?
No.
It's apri, like April. It opens the first of the 7 seals because the Lamb is Aries. Then the 4 living creatures. Now, it said voice like thunder. It's interesting they said voice like thunder. In Hebrew, the word for thunder translates to voices. So when they used to hear thunder, they used to think that was God talking or commanding them. Revelation 6:2. I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow. I mean, who's the bow? Who's the rider with the bow? It's Sagittarius. It's right there in the open for you to see. Then I heard what sounded, this is Revelation 6:6. Then I heard what sounded like a voice among the 4 living creatures. Again, the 4 fixed signs, saying 2 pounds of wheat for a day's wages, and 6 pounds of barley for a day's wages. Well, that's Virgo. And do not damage the oil and the wine. The oil and the wine are Libra. Well, guess what? Virgo and Libra are connecting signs. So there's 2 examples of both. Revelation 6:12. I watched as he opened the 6th seal. There was a great earthquake. The sun turned black like sackcloth made of goat hair. The whole moon turned blood red. The reason they put goat hair and moon together, this is slide 48, is because here's the goat. And then if you take its opposing sign, Cancer, its ruling planet is the moon. So the moon rules Cancer, and then the sun rules Leo. Now, if we continue, that's why they put goat hair and the moon back to back. Revelation 7:4. Then I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 from all the tribes of Israel. The Jehovah's Witnesses are particularly enthralled with this idea that only 144,000 get to go see God. That's what it is, that they get to go see God. But going to see God is a privilege for everyone, and I'm going to show you. There are 7 chakras. The root has 4 petals, the sacral has 6, the solar plexus has 10. The heart has 12, and the throat has 16, which equals 48. The third eye chakra is represented by 96 and only has 2 petals because it's 2 times as powerful as the lower chakras. So 48 times 2 is 96. The crown chakra is 1,000 times more powerful than the lower 6 chakras. When you add the lower 6, you get 96 plus 48 is 144, and you times that by the 1,000, you get your 144,000. What it's actually trying to tell you is, with the 144,000, is when you've activated all your chakras, that is when you get to go see God. And indeed you do. Revelation 9:3. And out of the smoke, locusts came down on the earth and were given power like that of scorpions on the earth. So I explained this to you about scorpion. What is the power of the scorpion? What can the scorpion do?
Death.
Huh?
Death? Kill? No.
It betrays, right?
Right.
The scorpion is the betrayer. Judas is the betrayer. So locusts, I'm going to show you in about 5 minutes when we get to the book of Matthew how locusts are a positive as they are a food source. But how do they betray? Well, in small quantities, they're a food source. But in large quantities, it's literally a plague. That's the betrayal. It goes from being something good to something horrible. That's the betrayer. Now, Revelation 12 is the woman with the dragon. We went over that already, so I'm going to skip that. Revelation 13:2. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. The leopard, there is a constellation in Gemini called Camelopardalis. I don't know if you've ever heard of it before, but it's a combination of two words. Camelos, or camel, and Pardalis. Camelos is camel. Pardalis means leopard, the camel leopard, which was the original name for the giraffe, because they saw this thing with the weird neck and the spots everywhere, and they called it the camel leopard because they had no other name for it. Camelopardalis is in Gemini. Ursa Major is in Cancer, that's the bear, the lion is Leo. So the beast I saw resembled a leopard, that's Gemini, Camelopardalis, with feet like those of a bear, that's Cancer, and the mouth like that of a lion. That is 3 signs in a row. This is celestial poetry that is teaching you the heavens. Then I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb. That's Aries, but it spoke like a dragon. The dragon starts in Aries. So this one is talking about Aries. Revelation 18:13. Cargoes of cinnamon and spice, of incense, myrrh and frankincense, of wine and olive oil. Incidentally, myrrh and frankincense, I didn't go over this with you before, but it's just coming up now. Myrrh and frankincense are olive plants, and olives are Libra. And guess what? Myrrh and frankincense are Libra, the wine is Libra, and the olives are also Libra. This whole sentence is Libra. Fine flour and wheat, that is Virgo. Virgo and Libra are connecting signs. The cattle is Taurus, the sheep is Aries. Taurus and Aries are connecting signs. The horses, that's Sagittarius. And human beings sold as slaves. So my point once again is not that those ancient people told literal stories, and we are now smart enough to take them symbolically, but that they told them symbolically, and we are now dumb enough to take them literally. So now I want to show you a deep dive into the book of Matthew, then go over a couple more things, and then that's going to be the first half of the presentation. So Matthew 3:2. Repent of your sins and turn to God, for the kingdom of heaven is near. Each gospel begins at one of the 4 major points of the zodiac. That would be here, the cardinal signs, the first sign of the season, summer, fall, winter, spring. Incidentally, by the way, when you connect the solstices and the equinox, they make the cross of God's son that he carries to his death right here at the end of Sagittarius. Again, this is the story that spawned the story. So,
and I have had, on equinoxes and solstices, and actually my first time I ever seen it, Stargate portal days. I didn't
How
know
many
what
people were with you?
I was by myself in my room getting ready.
You saw a Stargate portal by yourself?
Yeah, it was
usually individuals can't bring that kind of energy on their own.
Well, I live under a ley line that hasn't been open since Atlantis, that is above my roof of my house.
That makes sense. Okay.
So, I didn't know what it was, and 2 days later, I was revealed on another podcast. This lady, Magenta Pixie, named every color that I saw and said it was a Stargate portal. And I was just like, whoa, what does that mean? A Stargate portal. What's a Stargate portal? So I'm just trying to put these things together, but definitely some stuff is going on with the solstice, the equinoxes, like portal days, like the 10-10, the 11-11, the 12-12, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
It's
I'm
funny.
seeing it
It's funny because
physically with my eyes,
I talk to people about this all the time. I tell them, do you guys know why we really went to Iraq in 2003? It had nothing to do with 9/11. It had nothing to do with weapons of mass destruction. If you read the WikiLeaks leaks of Hillary Clinton's emails, they found the Tomb of Gilgamesh and a star portal. And the first thing they did when they found it, well, the first thing they did when they went to Iraq was they built a military site over it. But anyway, so you have these 4 signs, right? The kingdom of heaven is Christ or the sun ruling in Leo. The closest point to this is here, which is June 21st. So this is where the gospel starts. This is the cusp handover date between Cancer and Leo. It's the beginning of the kingdom. So check this out. Matthew 3:4. John's clothes were woven from coarse camel hair, and he wore a leather belt around his waist. For food he ate locusts, so there it is, food locust, and wild honey. If we take the most famous drawing of a man, Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, and superimpose it on the Zodiac, we can make sense of this. You don't have to use the Vitruvian Man. You can use a stick figure. It doesn't matter. But check this out. Cancer being the head, the beehive clusters in Cancer. That's where the honey is. The mouth and the head are in Cancer. So he is eating the honey. Leviticus 11, what's clean and unclean to eat. All flying insects that walk on all fours are to be regarded as unclean by you. There are, however, some flying insects that walk on all fours that you may eat. Those that have jointed legs for hopping on the ground. Of these you may eat any kind of locust. So here's the food source, locust. Katydid, cricket, or grasshopper. So when they're trying to tell you a pound of grasshoppers is 3 times as nutritious as a pound of beef, when the elites are trying to tell you that, just know they're getting it from Leviticus 11. It's biblical. Now, so we started in Leo, right? That's the beginning. And then we went to Cancer, the mouth, the beehive cluster, eating the honey. So eating the honey and the locust. In Gemini, which is a little lower down on the body, so that would be like right here. So it'd be like a shirt or something, right? Are the clothes made out of camel hair? Well, Camelopardalis is right here in Gemini. So that's 3 signs in a row. Little lower down on the body, so you start in Leo, and then you have Cancer right here, the beehive cluster, the mouth, eating the honey and the locusts. And then Gemini, you have the clothes, which is a little lower on the body, because Gemini is a little lower down on the zodiac wheel. And then Taurus you have here, which is like the midsection, right? That's like the belt area, right? Well, that's where you wear the belt. Taurus represents the bull and the female is the cow, which is where you get the leather from. Regarding the belt, Orion's belt is right here, which sits between Taurus and Gemini. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 signs in a row to open up. Now, next would be the baptism. So we started here. Now, how are we going to go from the beginning of Leo to a water sign to signify the baptism? You go across. You follow the opposing sign. This is touching Aquarius. So that's how you get to the baptism. Here's how we see how it makes a leap from one cusp to the other. The man with the water pitcher in Aquarius is personified as John the Baptist with the water. It's important to note, too, that John the Baptist and Jesus are always exactly 6 months apart. When you think about the fact that Jesus is born on December 25th and rises a degree a day, just like I'm showing you down here, that would mean that John the Baptist is born on June 24th and decreases a degree a day, right? Because if you're going this way, then the wheel naturally goes down this way. This is why in John 3:30, John says, he must increase, but I must decrease. And guess what? It's also why St. John's Day, if you pick up a Catholic calendar, is June 24th. It's exactly 6 months to the day of the birthday of Jesus. So the next story is the temptation of Jesus. So we're going back to here. This is where we started. What do you do? This is July 24th right here. Well, what do you do? Well, he's tempted for 40 days, right? So just count out 40 days. That's all you got to do. Because they tell you in the story he's tempted for 40 days. Well, guess what? 40 days is September 2nd. That's right in the middle of Virgo, the lady with the wheat stalk. What is the next passage? Matthew 4:3. If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become loaves of bread. Here we see mention of the bread, which tells you that the sun is in Virgo. So we started at Leo, then we're at Virgo, and then the next passage is Libra. The next passage is Matthew 5:17 and 22. I did not come to abolish the law. The law is Libra. If you are even angry with someone, you are subject to judgment, the scales that judge. Both law and judgment are Libra. So we started here now, and we went 3 signs this way. So what I'm showing you right here is that at the beginning of this entire story, you're going through 7 signs of the zodiac in a row. Matthew 7:15 and 16. Beware of false prophets who come disguised as harmless sheep. That's Aries right here. And can you pick the grapes from the thorn bushes? The grapes are harvested in Libra. That's its opposing sign. Once again, they are opposing signs. Now moving along. Matthew 13, later that same day, Jesus left the house and sat beside the lake. So that's a water sign, right? Well, you have Aquarius and Pisces. They said beside the lake. They didn't say in a lake. So if it's beside a lake, that's right here at the cusp. If they said he was in a lake, you could make the argument he was in one of the 2 water signs. But because they said beside the lake, he's right here. Now, if you follow this to its opposing sign that touches Virgo, is it ironic that the next parables from Jesus are the wheat and the weeds, the mustard seed, and the yeast? Now what you're going to do is you're going to come back here to touch Pisces so you can have the fishing net parable. See, each one of these zodiac signs tells a story. For example, Cancer is the crab or the scarab, but it's also the donkey. It's also the beehive cluster, the honey, the donkey. It's also the great bear, the bear. Each of these signs have a part of the story that you can use to manipulate the zodiac through these opposing signs or connecting signs in order to tell endless stories. And that's what they basically do. Gemini is the sign of the 2 men, technically twins. However, there's just a short mention of the brothers in the next passage. He's just the carpenter's son, and we know Mary, his mother, and his brothers, James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas. So we're in Gemini. This ends here, right? Because this is still in Gemini. Well, how do you know that? Well, if you follow its opposing sign, this is the day of death. And how do we know that? What's the very next story? It's the death of John the Baptist. As I've mentioned previously, the death comes at the end of Sagittarius. So I'm going to show you how Scripture is written now. Let's take this sentence, which sounds like it could be in the Bible, but isn't. If I say to you, the rulers were divided between war and love, it split the land in half. You could read that as a literal translation. Or, the ruling planet of Aries is Mars, who's the god of war. Its opposing sign is Libra, whose ruling planet is Venus, the goddess of love. There's your war and love. If you connect it, it splits the land in half. Literally does that. And that's how Scripture is written, guys. These are celestial poetry. This is celestial poetry, and each zodiac sign has a piece of the puzzle. Matthew 14, 17, and 32, but we only have 5 loaves of bread. That's Virgo, the bread, the lady with the wheat stalk, and Pisces, the 2 fish. The 2 fish, guess what? Those are opposing signs. Here's the cross of God's Son. We were just in Virgo. We were just in Virgo for the bread. And now next is Libra, which is law, wine, and oil. Remember, what story do we get now? The story of temple tax, which is law, giving debtor, which is law, divorce and marriage, which is law, and the parable of the vineyard worker, which is wine. And Virgo and Libra are 2 connecting signs. Then you have Scorpio, the betrayer. This is where Judas betrays Jesus with the kiss. Now it's 3 signs in a row. And then the death of Jesus right here, 4 signs in a row. Astrology is a language. If you understand this language, the sky speaks to you. And I actually understand this language. And this is what I do, is I teach people this. I teach people how to read these stories the way they were intended to be. So now let's read this again, because this might make more sense now. Are you starting to see the great implication of this so far? This means that at the very, very least, the Bible is not meant to be taken literally. So what is the point of this? We take for granted we have calendars, clocks, watches, weathermen. The ancients didn't have any of that. They had sundials. In the Bible, they worked on dream interpretations for harvest. They had to know things. They needed to know Taurus is when you put the plow on the bull and plant as above, so below. The Bible is an encoded farmer's almanac, and was the knowledge of staying alive the most important thing. They would look at the stars and see all this movement and make stories up about them and pass them down to their children, then them to their children. Eventually, they learned how to write, and they wrote them down, and it evolved from all the ancients. My point, once again, is not that those ancient people told literal stories, and we are now smart enough to take them symbolically, but that they told them symbolically, and we are now dumb enough to take them literally. So let me show you a couple of ways that they use astro-theology against us. For starters, the U.S. was not founded as a Christian nation. Let me read you a couple quotes. Christianity is the most perverted system that ever shone on man. That was Thomas Jefferson. I have found Christian dogma unintelligible. That's Benjamin Franklin. This would be the best of all possible worlds if there were no religion in it. That's John Adams. The Constitution is the guide which I will never abandon. That's George Washington. If we continue, and the day will come when the mystical generation of Jesus by the Supreme Being as his father in the womb of a virgin will be classed with the fable of the generation of Minerva in the brain of Jupiter. That's Thomas Jefferson in a letter to John Adams. What influence, in fact, have Christian ecclesiastical establishments had on civil society? In many instances, they have been upholding the thrones of political tyranny. In no instance have they been sent as the guardians of the liberties of the people. That's James Madison. The purpose of separation of church and state is to keep forever from these shores the ceaseless strife that has soaked the soil of Europe in blood for centuries. James Madison. And then this one's from Thomas Paine, 250 years ago. The Christian religion is a parody on the worship of the sun, in which they put a man called Christ in the place of the sun and pay him the adoration originally paid to the sun. Now, why?
Yeah, when the Council of Nicaea came, and was it the Council of Nicaea or that said basically, or no, the Constantine decided that he wanted to bridge all the religions together, and he wanted the pagans and the Christians to come together to one religion, and the Jewish people to come to one religion, and they decided to name Yeshua Jesus, meaning actually Hail Zeus is what Jesus means, Hail Zeus, the sun god. So he wanted to make everybody happy, so they came together to create, and they were going to either go with the Egyptian, or they were going to go with, Jesus, and they decided that it was going to be Jesus, and right?
Yeah, that's basically that's a shortened version of what happened, but yeah, they basically bridged it, yes. So let me show you this real quick. Roman Catholic Catechism 2116. All forms of divination are to be rejected. Recourse to Satan or demons, conjuring up the dead, or other practices falsely supposed to unveil the future. Consulting horoscopes, astrology, palm reading, interpretations of omens and lots, the phenomena of clairvoyance, and recourse to mediums. All conceal a desire for power over time, history, and in the last analysis, other human beings, as well as a wish to conciliate hidden powers. They contradict the honor, respect, and loving fear that we owe to God alone. So, if there's so obviously astrology in the Bible, why would the Roman Catholic Church ban you from it? So, here's the movie Face Off. You remember this movie?
I don't really. I've heard of it, but I can't remember what. Yeah.
Well, this is Nicolas Cage right here. Him and his brother, the names for him and his brother in the movie were Castor and Pollux Troy. That's the names of Gemini. John Travolta's character's name was Sean Archer, and the Archer is Sagittarius, the man with the bow and the arrow. These are opposing signs. So they know about this when they make movies. There are a ton of characters in Harry Potter that are named after stars or constellations. You have Draco Malfoy, Pollux Black, Sirius Black, Andromeda Black, Regulus Black, Arcturus Black, Cassiopeia Black, Orion, and Cygnus Black. In Batman Begins, there's a demon star in Taurus called Algol, which is where Ra's al Ghul or Al Ghul gets his name from in Batman Begins. The 1990 song video for the Cranberry Zombie, here's Dolores O'Riordan. She's painted gold like the sun, and her head dressings are like the rays of the sun. Well, in the very next scene, you see the sun on the cross, and then you see Sagittarius down here. Why? Sagittarius is the one that shoots the sun, killing it. But it's not just the Bible. If you don't know by now the Bible is not original, you still might have doubts. Here is 6,000 years of ancient holy text, going from 5 Sumerian tablets, the Babylonian and Numa Elish, the Code of Hammurabi, which is where the Jews get their punishment and code of ethics from, to the Egyptian Book of the Dead, to the Gnostic text, all of them, to the Quran, to the Book of Mormon. I'm still working on the Apocrypha, the Ethiopian Bible, and the Colburn Bible, but they are all the same. And that is the first half of my presentation. What do you think?
That's wild. And, you know, you get into the Gnostic text, and that's what I was going with the Council of Nicaea. They decided Jesus of Nazareth, Nazarene, Jesus was a Nazarene. The Een in Nazarene is Essene. Before Christians were called Christians, they were called Essenes. And the Essene Gnostic text, when the Council of Nicaea came, they said the Gnostics believed there's a demigod, a demiurge God that wasn't the real God, but there was a real God above that created all. But this demigod was an evil God, and basically the Council of Nicaea came in and said, no, this is our God is Yahweh, and Yahweh is our God, and that's it, and drew a hard line in the sand and said, you know, you can't, you know, and they burned all the Gnostics books and said, this is our God, and that's it, and killed a bunch of people over it, you know. So Jesus was an Essene. He followed the Essenes, which studied and believed in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is the oldest written Bible that I know of. What about you? Do you know of anything older than the Dead Sea Scrolls?
That's certainly one of the oldest, yeah. Absolutely. I'd have to look into that a little deeper, but yeah.
And then you got the Sumerian texts, which are some of the same stories in our Bible that's written in the Sumerian text, and that's about Enlil and Enki. And Enki and Enlil was kind of like a Yahweh God who flooded the earth and did all these things. Maybe this God or Yahweh or Enlil, they needed to do it because there was evil people, and that's what it kind of says. But you know, I'm just trying to learn this stuff. So I'm just putting these puzzles together and just learning all I can to try to understand who God is, because as a little girl and throughout my whole life, I've just always wanted to know more about God. I want to know more about you. And then he started revealing all this stuff to me, and it's like, whoa, you know, like this is a little different than what I had expected. So now I got to go down all these rabbit holes to understand what it is and what is this God, because I do believe there's a consciousness that created all that is, and there is this God, but then there's this other stuff going on.
Uh-huh.
So it's just a little much.
I actually have to run right now because I got to take care of a couple of things, but
Okay.
I really appreciate you giving me a platform to explain. Would you keep me posted? Let me know what people think.
Yeah, I'm going to put it out on some socials and see where it goes. You know, all I can do. So.
Amanda, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everything you're doing and all your work and dedication to this again. And what it's your website again is debunkmywork.com, and this is
Yes.
Micah Dank. And thank you so very much for coming on the show. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
God bless. All right, thank you guys all so very much for sticking this out and learning all this stuff. And we will have another podcast for you hopefully soon. God bless you all. And wait, we're going to say a prayer real quick too. All that is of this benevolent, loving source and force that we call God, the God of all things, the God that created everything. We just ask for the more that you're pouring out, that no weapons formed against us shall prosper, that we walk with faith, courage, hope, and strength to your glory, to new beginnings, to restoring our republic, to making new this planet, to showing us the way, the truth, and the light, and all that you are and do. We just ask for your blessing and your touch and your anointing and your favor in this time, because we really need you and your guidance to walk our paths and purposes, and help us to get on our paths and purposes and to go within and get informed on what that is. We just thank you for everything, and we love you so much. Thank you for your benevolent, loving touch. All men we pray. Bye, everybody.